How everybody doing? This is Poet Deep back with another episode. And this one is, in life and our challenges, doing the human thing, which is communication. And the reason why I say the human thing is due to a lot of things that we experience, trauma that we go through, struggles and things like that. It affects our ability to really be human, understanding that as humans, we are social creatures. We're meant to interact with each other. We live in an interdependent world where we depend on other people. So regardless of how we feel about other people's viewpoints or whatever, we all have to coexist on the same planet, same neighborhoods, same jobs, same streets and things like that, right? So one thing that I think is lacking in a lot of us is our ability to thoroughly communicate. And there's an art to communication. And due to our disappointment from our engagements and things that have happened between us and people, it has affected our ability to be able to effectively communicate with each other. And this caused a cycle of issues that continue in our lives. And the effect, it will continue to come. Now, everybody has had different experiences. And with these different experiences, we have had our own ways of how we cope with these experiences, how we've learned to talk, or things that we've learned what not to talk about and things like that. And the whole process of communication is a very vulnerable thing. And depending on what layers you go to, I would say, because sometimes to really stretching your mind, sometimes through communication, we have to lay out our ignorance of not knowing a thing, helping someone to understand that they're actually teaching us and being fine with that. And some of us are not comfortable with communicating with certain people on the basis of our relationship with that person at that particular time. So it makes it hard. But if we do not effectively communicate with people that are in our lives, it affects our ability to be able to have clarity about who we are and in our place in the universe. Because who we are is not just about what we think and, about the conversations that we're just having with ourselves in our minds, but it's also about our interactions and assessing ourselves in the context or in alignment with our interactions with other human beings, the way in which how we solve issues, the way in which how we're able to see ourselves in certain places and spaces, and looking at how we've address certain things over here versus how we address things over there. It's all part of the learning process. And due to the fact that today the communication is becoming so dumbed down, and besides it just being dumbed down, communication is really being diluted. It's so undervalued and it's so underappreciated. It's becoming more and more of a conflict. So, prime example, a lot of people feel more comfortable with communicating through text or social media. This is the best way of how people are able to get their thoughts out into the world. And the problem with that is that a lot of things can be led or go to the realm of misinterpretation. Things can happen like that with the spoken word, but we can be able to stop each other in real time. So be like, hold on, explain what that means. What do you mean by that? We can factor in body language and things like that. It's a lot of different things that we could factor in, and if we can't see somebody's tone of their voice if we're talking over the phone, it gives us the privilege of being able to gather important pieces of information that allow us to be able to construct our understanding. And we rob ourselves of that when our main source of communication is texting, in social media and things like that, because the deepest understandings, and I don't care how long or lengthy a text can be or a post can be and things like that, or email can be, it will never be able to replace just simply either seeing somebody. Seeing somebody is first, but some people might have long distance, travel, or, space between them and another individual, but at least being able to be on that phone, if necessary, is to give the communication as much tools that it needs for understanding to be achieved. It needs that, So with that being said, everything is so much done through the phone now. It's so much that, we have a heavy reliance on our phones. It's even to the point now that, people don't even necessarily type in what they're looking for. They speak to the phone and the phone looks it up and bring back the search results, And I understand that a lot of things we're doing is, it's in the name of efficiency and things like that, keeping up, on top of things. But if it's at the expense of something that make us human, that's a very vital skill. And it's a vital skill because the world cannot move forward without people communicating. And there are a lot of different things to communicate about. It's a lot of different things to communicate about, and a lot of us are not properly being serviced and living a quality life because of our inability to effectively communicate, for someone to be able to understand us. It's not for people necessarily to agree with what we're saying, but for people to really be able to understand, because a lot of us, we have needs, we have spiritual requirements, we have a lot of different things, and a lot of us, it's hard for us to communicate that. And it's hard for us to communicate that because the comfort is not there. And not only that, but sometimes just the understanding of how important and vital our voice is. Some of us don't really understand it. Some of us feel like some of our thoughts are best left off quiet. And so we need to have certain spaces that's dedicated to different channels of communication. Sometimes we need people in our lives that we can trust and we can just vent to in a raw form. And we understand that that raw form might not be suitable for certain people based off of their understanding of you. So that might not, you can't just go around just venting and dropping your world on everybody. But you need people that you could be able to do that with, and people that can be able to build you up in that process, or just be able to listen to you and be able to keep that in this context. And you also need people that you have healthy exchanges with, people that can make you want to be better or sharper with your communication, because you can learn if you're being understood by someone's interpretation about what you're saying. So you can say something and you can, have that dialogue. You can have that exchange with the other person, and the other person run back to you what they understand or what they grasp. You can allow them to, you can tell them like, no, that's not what I mean. And sometimes we can see that, okay, maybe they're dealing with something that's not allowing them to see what I'm saying, or we're not pulling the necessary words, the right vocabulary, the right phrases, or having the necessary ingredients within us to allow ourselves to say what we need to say. And that's going to be an ongoing concern the more and more technology is taking over and so dominant in our lives, especially with artificial intelligence, as it's being continuously being developed and things like that. So we don't want to lose that ability, because communication is something that we need to be able to sustain our families, our personal bonds, our marriages, our relationships with our children. Everything is going to be about our communication, and a lot of times, many of us are living in assumptions about what people think about us or how people see our situations. And we've never really had the time, or we've never taken the time to really get a detailed understanding of what people think. What do they really have to say? And so living by assumptions become our way of factual living. Like our assumptions are as good as fact. And we try to become secure with that way of thinking. And that's not a good way of thinking, because you never know. You never know. So when we start to take on our assumptions or our opinions about how we see situations, as this is just the know-all to the situation, and we feel comfortable, that we stop learning, we stop growing. Because within understanding other people, the dimensions within other people, you have their life lessons, you have their life experiences, good and bad, that's all packed into their communication. And if we're looking at it correctly, we can be able to be fed by that, even if the exchange is not a pleasant exchange. An exchange does not have to go well or feel good for you to be able to learn something about it and for it to be able to impact your life. Life does not operate like that. Everything that can be developed to the greater good does not necessarily have to happen by what we think is good. Because some of us think struggle is not a good thing. But through struggle, we are developing something. And while we're developing something, we're learning something. And we can be able to utilize that as a tool to be able to solve other issues in our lives. So we have to try not to be in a mind space or the mindset, whereas, the communication to be effective, that, it has to be something smooth. And once it's not smooth anymore, then I should not communicate. Because a lot of times we have a shut down point. We have a point, whereas when the communication or the exchange gets to this level, we don't want to talk anymore. And I think we have to go through all of those different processes, because it allows us to be deeper in discovery of other people, but especially ourselves. Because when you have to maintain your calmness, you try to maintain your logic to the best you can, you are learning about your own depths. You are learning about your own cutoff points, or you're learning about your own tolerance that you have. And there's a lot of wisdom within that process, and you're going to be able to need it, especially when we're living in a world where so many people are torn psychologically. And it doesn't matter about, age, status, or anything. A lot of us are going through a lot as a people, and in order for us to be able to make it, especially as black people, especially as black families, sustaining ourselves and things like that, we have to have a very deep, sincere understanding, and we have to have a lot of tolerance. We have to have a lot of tolerance for each other. And so that tolerance and that understanding is only going to come through the communication process. And a lot of times, especially in the start of it, we're not going to like it. Especially if we're really finding our voice. And if we haven't found those safe places of where to give our voice at. And when I mean those safe places of where to give our voice at, I mean those places where we can be able to drop what we have to say in a raw form. And so as we're learning how to do all of that, and we're learning how to feel comfortable with being vulnerable, but not feeling like we're at loss or something has went totally wrong because now we're vulnerable, or we get lost in the process. We got to learn how to have a universal trust, is that everything will be okay. Even if we start to look back at certain things we say, like, oh, I wish I didn't say that. I wish I said this. Actually, the more I think about it, that doesn't make sense. Or it makes sense, but it doesn't really express the depths of what I was trying to get across. We can always pick up and go again. And it might not even be with the same person. We have to be able to feel secure with that certain exchanges are going to happen with certain people that we'll never be able to fix. And so we don't want to halt the communication process with others because it's stuff that we didn't get to fix with other people in our past. The people that we were not able to fix certain things within our past is just an inspiration and motivation to fix things moving forward. Certain things and certain understandings we will not be able to correct. And we have to learn how to feel secure and feel okay with that. That's just part of life. Just like there are things in our past that we wish that we could fix. In certain instances or certain regrets that some of us might have. But we can't. We've continued to move forward. And we have to continue to move forward. So what we should learn from these situations that we did not address correctly, or things that we've witnessed that did not get addressed correctly, is that now it helps us to be more mentally prepared, and it allows us to be more mindful. And as we grow, we'll continue to go through that. We'll continue to go up that ladder. And as we continue to go up that ladder, that's how we build. Because, see, effective communication is part of character development. And if we're spiritual beings that are really focused on evolving spiritually, character development has to be part of that process. You can't have it without character development. You can't have spiritual evolution without character development living in this physical plane. And you cannot have proper character development if you have not honed in on your communication skills. Because we don't just exist and live in this world amongst ourselves. The things that we do, the decisions that we make, the things we say out our mouths have an impact on other people. And vice versa. So we want to learn how to be in tune with that. And that's a process. It's not overnight. It is a process. And we have to respect that it's a process. And we have to be patient with ourselves. And we definitely have to be patient with others. So when we find ourselves in tight spots, let's learn again how to be humans and not just being like conditioned beings who are just fed these devices, that this becomes the totality or the best channel in which how we express ourselves. So when I say let's do the human thing, communication is a human thing. And through a lot of our devices and a lot of our pleasures in this society today, we don't understand the seriousness of it, but we're really dehumanizing ourselves. We're robbing ourselves of essential ingredients of what makes us human. And the stress, the depression and things we're feeling is because nutritionally we're starving, because we're being depleted of those nutrients. Communication is one of those nutrients. So let's do the human thing. Let's reflect. Let's be patient. Let's also be courageous. And let's think about our truth. It's not wrong with even rehearsing what you have to say. It's not wrong with writing your thoughts down, getting it together. But let's do the human thing. Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to really build our families. That's the only way that we're going to be able to maximize on our relationships, is through communication. Everybody, have a good one. Check out my single that I put out. I put it out on March 22nd. It's March 31st. So that was out. Wow. Man, that 11 days went by. No, that's not 11 days. Look, I can't count. That's 9 days. Fly Away. Definitely check that out. I'll put the link to the song in the description box. Everybody have a good one. Be back at you soon. Peace.